You can sense the intensity as they await the arrival of the Tennessee team here at Leland Stadium. The #1 undefeated Volunteers prepare to race onto the field. Everything is riding on this football game. So there's a special intensity, a special urgency. Here come the Volunteers. Wherever you listen throughout the world, it's football time in Tennessee.
Back to throw across the middle, pass complete. Ball down at the 35, to the 40, to the 45, to the 50, to the 45, to the 40, to the 35, 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, 5. What did he do? All he did was score. Joey Tenn, touchdown on play number 1. Peyton Manning.
He drifts down. Here's a pass also. Put it on his hip, hook leg, and he'll walk it in. Touchdown, Tennessee, 20-0. Dobbs drops back, looks, loads up, fires long for the end zone. The pass is going to be caught by Tennessee. Tennessee wins! Caught it by Tennessee, Jawan Jennings. Jennings makes the catch in the end zone on the Hail Mary.
What's going on, Vol fans? What's up, SEC fans? Bobby C here, aka Catfish. We're bringing you our very first Facebook Live call-in show. The number's on the screen, 855-489-7623. We got some open lines. But before we do, this episode is brought to you by Woodard Whitetails up in Glasgow, Kentucky. Give them a call. They handle corporate hunts and a private hunt of a lifetime. They've got some trophy monster bucks up there. One of these days, Catfish is going up there, and he's going to snip the fence, sneak in, and get me one of them big old bucks. But tell them Catfish sent you at 270-925-7074. And a lot of you guys know me from YouTube. I've got a pretty good YouTube following, and I thought I'd branch out on my social media stuff into Facebook. I've had this Facebook page for a little while, just posting up some of my YouTube videos and different memes that I've seen, but I found a way to do my live call-in show over Facebook, so I thought I'd give it a try. We'll probably have some technical difficulties, but I appreciate y'all hanging in there. And we've got a guest host, Couch Coach is how you know him on YouTube, but he's Daniel Moore on Facebook, and he's going to be on in just a minute. But don't forget, we've got just a couple more days if you want to go fishing with me on a guided monster catfish and striper bass fishing trip the Friday before the Florida game. We've got a former Tennessee Vol player that played in Super Bowl 11, Farragut High School grad, Neil Clabo, is going to be going fishing with us. And so that's going to be a trip of a lifetime. That's going to be Friday morning. Then Friday afternoon, I've got a on-location live show I'm going to do with Neil and possibly another Tennessee player. And then we're going to do a pregame at a sports bar and a post game, and you can come out and watch the Florida game with Catfish, and BVD's going to be there, so it ought to be a great time. And So don't forget, you can still buy your tickets for that to be drawn to go fishing with me and a former player on Tennessee River Monsters down on Watts Bar. You can email me at volunteerroadshow@gmail. The number of tickets you want, they're $5 a piece with a 2-ticket minimum. Just tell me how many tickets you want, and I'll get you a PayPal invoice sent out to you, and you can be in the drawing. I'm gonna have the drawing this Friday on my YouTube page. On my live show, I'm gonna have the head of Fishing for Soldiers on there, and he's gonna actually do the drawing. So that ought to be a fun time. So you still got a couple more days to get your tickets, but we're gonna talk some football. We've got Couch Coach on with us, and we're going to talk about how good we've been doing. Let me tell you something. If you want to make some money, you're behind on the rent and the light bill, just call up me and Couch Coach, and we can sure enough help you out. We've done pretty good, haven't we there, Couch Coach?
Yes, sir. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. Tell everybody just how good we are, because we really could offer a service to people to make a few extra pennies anyway. How have we done so far?
Well, we are 5-2 against the spread, so that's pretty good, I'd say. And I think about 5-2 against our straight up as well. So that's what, about around that 70% rate. So that's not too shabby. So you guys just keep hanging with us. We're going to make you some money and make you feel good about yourselves.
Well, we are geniuses. We don't like to brag. It's not too often that there's a genius Georgia Bulldog fan, but you're one of them. So how did we do this past week? We had Texas A&M and Clemson. Before we go into that, tell me and the viewers, a lot of you guys don't know I don't get to watch a lot on TV because I'm driving this truck so much, but what's this deal on this controversial call that everybody's talking about that Texas A&M got robbed?
Yeah, well, I know that I watched the end of that game, and basically, I forget who the receiver was for A&M, but I think he fumbled the ball at about the 5-yard line, and it went through. The ref said that it went through the end zone. The replay showed that it didn't even look like it went past that pylon, and they called it a touchback. Clemson got that ball back at the 20-yard line, didn't do anything with it. A&M scored, didn't get the extra the 2-point conversion. The game ended 28-26. But Jimbo almost got kicked out of the game because after that play came back and they said that it went through the end zone. I mean, A&M would have had the ball at the 5-yard line with the possibility to score. If they stopped Clemson on a 3-and-out, they had a chance to win that ball game. So it was a very, very controversial call. I didn't think it went through the end zone, and a lot of other fans who watched that felt the same way, and I really felt that A&M got hosed in that game.
Now, did you tell me earlier that so when that play happened, Clemson got the ball on the touchback and didn't do anything with it, and then A&M got another chance at it?
Absolutely. They scored, didn't get the 2-point conversion, but the point on all that was if A&M scored, because I think they had about 2.5 minutes left in the game at that point, they scored there. Maybe if they came up short, they still would have had another shot at beating Clemson, or at the very least getting a field goal there to even possibly win that game, especially with the way Amond was throwing that football. So it was very controversial. Clemson was probably the better team, but boy, they really struggled with that secondary, and they were really on their heels for that part of that fourth quarter.
Now, did you watch the whole game, or pretty much all of it?
I watched the first 2 quarters. It was 14-3 Clemson, and it looked like Clemson was about to run away with it. I mean, the new kid Trevor Lawrence looked pretty good. I mean, he made a great throw there, and I was like, all right, well, eventually Clemson's just going to take over here at their talent and prove themselves. But boy, Mon really hit his stride, and I think he threw for 400 yards on him or something in the secondary. I mean, Clemson's secondary looked rough. So they were definitely on their heels, and even Dabo was like, we were very fortunate to win this game tonight. So it was a very close game, and I've been talking about A&M as a team that's on the program on the rise, as a possible dark horse team in the SEC this year, and I definitely feel that way next year about them. They could even surprise them a 9-3 record this year or something. I mean, they looked pretty stout, especially in their place.
How much do you think it just was Clemson not as good as advertised, or Texas A&M is a lot better than people thought they were going to be? What's your opinion?
Gosh, I just have a hard time believing that Clemson is not as good as advertised. with the recruiting classes they've gotten in there, with that elite defensive line they have, with the quarterbacks that they're able to get. I mean, I can't believe that Clemson is overhyped. I think that it was just something but they are a little overhyped in that secondary for sure. And I think even Pigskin and some of these guys have talked about how their secondary was a little bit of a concern, but boy, they really struggled there. And if they can't get that fixed, the teams like Tua and some of these other teams that they ever face them, they're going to have a real problem there. I mean, that Mon kid is a good ball player, but boy, I think put like 400 yards on him or something like that. So that's crazy.
Well, tell me about the quarterback situation with Clemson. Who went most of the way? Was it Kelly Bryant or Trevor Lawrence? Do you think they're close to solving their quarterback dilemma?
It's interesting because I think that you have three programs in the top three right now that are all kind of going through quarterback issues. Obviously, Alabama and Jalen Hurts and Tua. You have Clemson going on with Kelly Bryant and Trevor Lawrence, and then you have Georgia going on with Jake Fromm and Justin Fields. Alabama and Georgia, I think for now they're pretty set with Fromm and Tua. Alabama, I don't even think it's a contest there. I don't even know what Nick Saban's trying to prove about, we're going to play two quarterbacks, or we're going to keep everybody guessing. That guy is, he is fooling himself if he thinks anyone is game planning for anybody other than Tua Tagovailoa or whatever his last name is. But with Clemson, they kind of do it both. I mean, they have Kelly Bryant in there a little bit. He did pretty well. But the Trevor Lawrence kid just has that wow factor. I mean, he threw a pass to someone's back shoulder that receiver took that ball over to the defender and went yard with it. I mean, he just knows how to place that ball. He's going to be the future for sure. But I think all those teams kind of have the mentality of look, we're going to play who we're going to play, and we're going to get both of them in there, and we might start one guy over the other. But I think with Clemson, I think they're still pretty good at the 50-50 arrangement on both of those guys for now.
Well, before we get into your game, I want to remind those that are tuning in, this is my very first Facebook Live call-in show, and you can give us a call at 855-489-7623 and talk to myself and Couch Coach. But this is just like the YouTube live show that I've been doing for a while that's been pretty successful, and I thought I'd go live on Facebook. So this is our very first time. I hope it's turning out well. So let's get into the overhyped game of the decade. I told you not to worry on the phone. It wasn't going to be close. I think I seen you post on Facebook you was jumping up and down about an interception, but I told you don't worry about it, and I was right. So tell me about that game. I didn't get to listen to a second of it. I just caught the scores when I could on the radio, but I had a more important game, going on my life with Tennessee and ETSU. But tell everybody your thoughts as a Georgia fan, how that game went for you.
Yep. Well, and before I go into that, you bring up a really good point when you talk about, as an outsider, you're able to look at that game and say, this is what I think based on what I see the line says and what I think and how I feel about each team. And there's some real value in the analysis that you brought, because when I looked at it, I'm like, yeah, Georgia could cover that. But again, I have a lot of things going on in my head about, well, maybe South Carolina could pull it off. Maybe they could beat us. So I start overanalyzing, right? And it's kind of the same thing that you did the week before with West Virginia and Tennessee. You start kind of overanalyzing on your team. And, sometimes the right answer is, look, you saw the line. It says 10. You like Georgia. Georgia's the better team. And you said that, and you were right. And so I think that's a good lesson for all these folks who are looking at the betting lines, is just go by your first instinct and go with that. But as far as my team, look, we had a business approach. We went in there, and we just proved that we're a better team than South Carolina. And all these South Carolina fans that were clucking in the offseason and saying that they were going to give us a hard time and that we are overrated and that we were one and done and that, we were going to expose the Williams-Brice, all our losing record there the last decade with another coach. All that stuff didn't matter, and we said that from day one, and we went in there and we completely exposed them. And I'll tell you something else. Will Muschamp better get his act together, because South Carolina fans are going to figure out pretty quick that if this is all he does in big games, then he's not going to be there very long. I mean, that schedule gets tougher next year with Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Texas A&M getting better. You got to assume that Florida and Tennessee are going to start getting better in year 2. So, look, Muschamp, if he just keeps getting blown out in big games and being non-competitive, South Carolina fans aren't going to put up with that, and that's a pretty patient fan base. So, Georgia just did what they did. I mean, I thought that we could have did a little bit better in that second quarter. I felt like we hit a snag there a little bit. I felt like we could have put the game out a little bit sooner than normal. But I just feel like about South Carolina what I felt with them the beginning of the year. They're an all-right team. Jake Bentley's an all-right quarterback. Will Muschamp's a subpar head coach and a good recruiter. But they're an 8 to 9 win program, and that's where they're going to be. And these South Carolina fans, I think they're going to go 11-1. Well, where are you basing that information off based on your entire history? How could you possibly think that Will Muschamp is an upgrade over Steve Spurrier? I mean, Steve Spurrier went 11-2, 10-2 in most years. So, I just see that's where it just helps to have some objectivity about your team.
Well, did you see Carolina Jackpot's video, his pregame? Did that get you fired up?
Well, look, that guy, man. I mean, look, he's a homer, and that's fine. But at some point, it's just like I try to be an objective Georgia fan, and there's some Georgia fans that will say like, "Well, you're not a true fan. If you don't get behind the team and say we're going to go 12-0," and I'm like, no, this team is an 11-1, 10-2 football team this year. That's my analysis. We're going to lose one game this year, maybe a couple games in the regular season. I felt about this team the way I felt about them at the beginning of the year. We're a very good team. We're going to win the East. Do I think we're good enough in spots to beat Alabama right now? No, we're not. Now, could that change by week 10 or week 11 or week 12? Absolutely. But I think our super team is coming in 2019. That is my opinion. Now, I could be completely wrong, but I tend to have decent analysis about that kind of stuff. But these South Carolina fans that, what are you basing your information on after the fact that you went like 9-4, 6-6, you got killed by Clemson the last 2 years, you got killed by Georgia in your home stadium. I mean, Will Muschamp, like I said, he's not going to survive that if he keeps getting drug up and down in his own stadium. I mean, look what happened to Butch Jones when he started getting whipped at home. Look what happened to Mark Richt when he got whipped by Alabama at home. I mean, see, there's losses that are bad, and then there's losses that affect the pocketbook. And you guys, especially with Butch Jones, when Butch Jones started losing the way he did, Tennessee fans are like, I'm not going to spend any more money on this until you fix it. Yeah. So this is what's going to happen with Muschamp. If he keeps getting blown out in games like this, it's going to affect the pocketbook, and that's when coaches get fired.
Well, I think he's a decent coach. I don't know what his deal at Florida was. He was in one of the most richest recruiting grounds in all the country. But anyway, let's go on to. We had a comment. Somebody wants us to talk about TCU versus Ohio State, and we were going to go talk about some of the other games going on next week, but we're going to go ahead and bring on a caller here, and I think he wants to talk about this game. Now let me tell you something. This game is really not going to be a game, I don't think. I don't think Ohio State's going to win. Now, I'm saying this because I think I know who this caller is. It sounds like it's Delusional Paul. Busted my chops, followed me over from YouTube on to Facebook. Is that who I've got on the air with us?
There's football outside the SEC East, folks.
Really?
Number four Ohio State going down to Texas to play TCU at the Dallas Cowboys Stadium, where we beat Oregon for the 2014 National Championship.
Okay, I'm listening.
Okay, so it's I'll give it to you because I know a lot of your fan base likes to put a wager in a little bit here or there. 12.5 point spread. I thought long and hard about this.
Put your money on TCU. Put your money on TCU.
No.
I would too. 12.5. shoot, I'm taking
12
TCU
and a
on
half.
that.
Talk to me off air, Mr. Couch Coach. We can make a little wager.
All right, listen. Hold on. Let me stop this train. It's a lot further from Columbus, Ohio, or anywhere in Ohio to Dallas than it was from Ohio to Orlando. And I was at the game when Tennessee played Ohio State in the 95 Citrus Bowl. Heisman Trophy winning running back Eddie George. And it was like Neyland Stadium South. Y'all don't travel very well, at least the games that I've seen. So that's going to be a home game for the Horned Frogs. So I don't know how you think you're going to cover 12.5 points with a quarterback that hasn't played anybody, played one good half against a mediocre Michigan team. So I'm listening. I'm going to sit back. I don't have any cigarettes to smoke while you're talking, but just pretend I'm smoking a cigarette, and I'm going to listen to what you have to say about this game.
Well, sit back on that nice, comfortable chair you got there in your truck. And I think in the Dome, that favors this is the most athletic Ohio State team we've seen in a long time. And their receiver core is starting to click on all cylinders. They're opening it up to Dwayne Haskins to throw it. And you got two running backs, Mike Weber and Dobbins, that are just going to wear TCU out. So Ohio State's going to put a lot of points on the board. The only question is, how well will TCU's offense do against our secondary, which is problematic? We got a great defensive line with Chase Young and Nick Bosa. But I do think TCU can put up some points. It'll probably be a track meet, but I just think Ohio State's high-powered offense will get them, and they'll cover the 12.5.
You really do. Now, is this your heart speaking? Now, one of the things I've told Couch Coach when he's helped me on this betting stuff that we do is never bet on your own team. If you were using real money, would you bet $100 that Ohio State would cover this?
I'd probably throw a 20 or 40 on them.
So you're somewhat confident. You're not confident.
What I'm thinking? Well, no. If it was 8-quarter game, I would take the points. It's just Ohio State's going to wear them out. You got to understand, Mike Weber and Dobbins are two of the top running backs in all of college football, and they got a split carry. So you're going to get a fresh running back against – this is probably the best offensive line Ohio State's had in quite some time. And so they're just picking their spots and just attacking these holes. And then you got to respect the run. Dwayne Haskins can just pick his spots. The offensive line – go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Let me ask you this, because I think, a lot of what you're saying is fine. And I think if it was -13, -12.5 at home for you guys, I think that you could be very comfortable about your team covering that and even blowing TCU out. But the fact that it's kind of a neutral site, that's a little bit different.
What do you mean neutral site? It's Texas Christian University. It's in Dallas, Texas, Arlington, Texas.
Okay,
it's a home game for TCU.
Okay, right. Sorry about that. Well, here's the deal. The over and under for that game is 60 points. Are you liking the over on the 60?
I was thinking 38-17.
Okay, so you like the under. So you like the under on the 60?
I'd stay away. Couch Coach.
See, I would take the over on that 60. I like that 60 more than I like the side, for you to tell you the truth. I think because you have a very prolific offense, and TCU, they don't play any defense, but they play good offense in that league. So to me, it would be natural to bet more on the over and under, and you guys might win like 45-30 or 45-38 or something like that. I think it's going to be very high scoring, and you guys don't really play defense either, so I think that's where I would put my emphasis.
Well, I would be careful with that. Nick Bosa and Chase Young are ridiculous in our defensive line. Our secondary is just a little they just got to gel and get better before we get into the playoffs. But
regardless, I like that 60, man. I mean, if we're going over and under, because I think here's my gut reaction on it. I think you win the game, but I think maybe TCU hits on that point on the side, and then I would play that over, and you guys might win like 38-31 or something like that. Like, I think it could be that kind of game.
Well, I'm telling you right now, Mr. Couch Coach, I'd take the 12.5 for Ohio State. They'll blow it open in the fourth quarter.
Well,
it'll probably be over
that's
before
fine.
then.
I mean, I could just still see it being like a 45-30 kind of game. That's just my
that's 15 points, meaning Ohio State covers the spread.
That's fine. So, but I still think it's going to be a fairly high-scoring affair.
All right. Well, thank you guys for your time. Do you have any other questions for a Big Ten homer?
No, just I don't know. Just go crawl back into your hole and drink some more of that Big Ten Kool-Aid and check me out this Friday at 8 o'clock because I'm announcing a winner of my fishing trip. I appreciate it, Delusional Paul. You're always welcome on my show. Before we go into our games last week, well, it looks like somebody's got some beeping going on. Anyway, before we get into our games next week, before we end this show, we've got Vol General. He's a new YouTuber, and I wanted to introduce everybody to Vol General, and he's got a YouTube channel. Just look up the Vol General on YouTube, and he broke down the West Virginia game, so I'm giving him an opportunity to come on the show and talk Tennessee football. Are you there, Vol General?
Yes, I am. How are you doing, Catfish?
I'm doing pretty good. So tell everybody your breakdown of our first two games, and then we're going to talk about the future and wrap it up with Couch Coach in next week's games for a minute and end the show. So how have we done so far as a Tennessee fan? And then I'm sure Couch Coach will jump in and rain on your parade and throw some shade at Tennessee like he does me. But have at it and tell everybody what you think about our team and our season so far.
Yeah, well, I'll start with the West Virginia game. That's where most of the negatives are. What happened there, I'd like to start with the offensive line. A lot of people would say that their biggest concern so far would be the secondary. And I can see why they would say that. But for me, it's the offensive line. Trey Smith is an elite player, but the rest of that line, it just ain't looking good. It just ain't looking too good. And I'll tell you, the right side of that offensive line, it couldn't block Big Vol Daddy. And that's just no offense to Big Vol Daddy. I'm just joking there. But the offensive line is my biggest concern so far, with the exception of Trey Smith. And Garantano, when you look at him, he's been fairly accurate when he is given enough time. He's been fairly accurate when given time to throw by the offensive line. And if you saw the first play of that West Virginia game, Brandon Kennedy, he's injured now, so he won't be playing for the rest of the season. But he missed the block, and the nose tackle came in and hit at Garantano, and Garantano ended up losing the football. So that's how that game started. And but when Garantano does have enough time to throw, he's been very fairly accurate. So I do give him credit there. Going into the season, I wanted Garantano to start. I thought Garantano would start, and I did. And Garantano ended up starting. And he's proven that he can be a starting quarterback for Tennessee so far. If the season starts going south, then I would suggest putting Chris in. But for now, Garantano is your starting quarterback. In the running back position, by far, in my opinion, is the strongest for Tennessee right now. In the West Virginia game, Tim Jordan comes out, has a great game versus the Mountaineers, as well as graduate transfer from Michigan State, Madre London. He had a good game too. And then versus ETSU, you see true freshman Jeremy Banks come in, and he has an exceptional game versus ETSU. I selected him as my player of the game versus ETSU. He was running Buccaneers over left and right. He had an absolutely near perfect game, in my opinion. But I do have a few questions for you, Couch Coach, and this comes from the wide receiver position, or Catfish.
Yeah.
Marquez Callaway has played the best so far, without a doubt. I don't think that's up for debate this season. But when you look at Jennings, Juwan Jennings, he seems to just have totally disappeared from the offense so far. He doesn't start anymore. He didn't start either game. and I was at the ETSU game, and I only saw him targeted twice, maybe 3 times. I don't think he had any catches versus ETSU. He only had 1 or 2 versus West Virginia. What do you think happened there? Why do you think they're not targeting him much anymore?
I don't know if, and I was wondering the same thing because I'm listening to it, so I don't get to see him line up or when he's on the play unless Kessling mentions it. But I'm wondering how much of that had to do with his dust up with on Twitter or whatever he did, and maybe he's being made to earn his spot because of that. I don't know. So you get
that's
a chance.
Definitely what I was thinking.
You get a chance to listen to a lot more local news than I do. So that's my first thought, but I don't know. I haven't heard anybody talk about it specifically.
Yeah, but if for those of you watching who don't know, Jauan Jennings got on, I think it was Instagram Live or something, and he was mad at the coaching staff because he thought he would play versus Vanderbilt last year, and he got on Instagram and started going off on the coaching staff, talking bad about Butch Jones, or he had been fired at the time, obviously, but he talked bad about Brady Hoke and that entire coaching staff. And John Curry ended up kicking him off the football team. Later, he was reinstated by Philip Fulmer, which is why he's on the team now, obviously. But I really agree with you there, Catfish, that that's probably why he's not playing much. He's trying to earn his way back to being a starter, maybe.
Well,
but if that is what's going on, I really like that decision by Pruitt.
Well, not Pruitt, but Fulmer has a history of giving people second chances when he was a coach. But I want to go back to what you were saying about Trey Smith. I heard he went out in the West Virginia game and got nicked up. Is he 100%?
He's good. He's back now. He was playing I think he was playing the ETSU game most of the time. They might have taken him out after they got that huge lead and gotten some experience. But I don't know if you heard this or not. I think it was on the Twitter where I saw this. Pruitt, when asked why he was switching out the offensive lineman, he said, I think it was along the lines of, when you don't have much separation between the guys, you might as well rotate them. So he's putting in a very inexperienced offensive line. I like that decision to try to get experience for future years because, let's be honest, this is not going to be a good year for Tennessee. Their ceiling is probably 7 wins now with the loss to West Virginia. But and he's right. There's not much separation between some of these offensive linemen and the freshmen that are coming in here. And I really like the decision that he is using right now to get some experience for those guys.
Well, I do know they mentioned before, I think this last game, or maybe it was the West Virginia game, I don't remember, but I was listening to the pregame, and they were talking about how they had before the season started, they had tried out 20 different rotations on the offensive line.
Yeah.
So that tells you 2 things. They're throwing a lot up against the wall because we don't have a lot of talent, or they think that we have something, we just got to get the right combination. But that's a lot of different combinations. I guarantee you Georgia doesn't have that many possible rotations out there. Neither does Alabama.
But what's your biggest concern, Catfish? I'm about to get the secondary here in a second. But what's your biggest before I get to the secondary, what's your biggest concern? The secondary, or is it the
offensive line's number 1, and we're starting 3 freshmen in the secondary? That gets me concerned when you go up somebody like Georgia or even Missouri with Drew Lock. I think, man, they could expose us if we can't get to the quarterback.
Yeah. I was talking to a good friend of mine when I asked him, why do you think that Jeremy Pruitt is starting all these inexperienced individuals on the secondary? And he said, I really didn't think about this. I couldn't believe I didn't think about this before he said it. He said that he was trying to build from the bottom up. He's trying to get experience for future years into these. He's trying to get experience for future years, trying to build that up by getting experience for the inexperienced guys. And I thought that could be part of the reason Jauan Jennings isn't starting as well, because he's trying to build from the bottom up, trying to get experience for inexperienced guys, because he knows this year probably won't go too well and he's trying to build up for future years where Tennessee would have a chance to compete for the SEC or SEC East. Is that something you would consider?
Yeah, I can see Pruitt doing that, but he also has to balance a fine line on getting some wins too. And I know the Couch Coach probably has an opinion on that, but before we get to Couch Coach, go ahead and run down our secondary, and then we'll get to Couch Coach talking about next week's game and close this show out. So if there's anybody out there, the number to the show is 855-489-7623. We've got several open lines. We've had one delusional Ohio State fan call in, but everybody that's watching, this is my first Facebook Live show. I do a YouTube Live that does pretty well, so this is my first time doing this Facebook Live. I hope you enjoy it. But talk to me about the secondary there, Vol General.
Well, the secondary, along with the offensive line, is a big concern among Vol fans, a huge concern, and it should be. It should be. The secondary looked very bad against the Mountaineers of West Virginia. But then again, I do think some people might be overreacting a little to that game, because when you look at West Virginia's air raid offense and you look how good that offense was last year and going forward, you see just how elite that offense is. And I do think that they're going to make a lot of secondaries look how we looked on Saturday or last Saturday. Secondary, obviously concerned. It is still something Jeremy Pruitt needs to improve upon. Focusing on the secondary as a coach and on the defensive side of the ball, that's something he needs to improve upon if we want to take down the Gators of Florida. But we'll learn a lot about our secondary coming up week 4 on September 22nd versus Florida. Because I wouldn't overreact too much.
Let me interrupt here real quick so we can stay on topic here. I've had several people ask about when they thought J.J. Peterson was going to hit the field, and about what's happened with Todd Kelly Jr. Has he even seen the field yet this year?
Look, Todd Kelly Jr. has some personal problems along the off season. I don't want to get into that.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into that because of I'm praying for the kid. He's having a rough time right now.
Yeah.
I don't want to get off on that.
Is he with the team at all?
He is. He's most likely is, but I do think he's having some mental health issues right now that he needs to address. So I don't want to talk about that much, but that's probably why he's not seeing the field much. But on the other hand, J.J. Peterson, he's just now getting to campus. He got to campus at the buzzer, basically.
Yeah.
So he's on the team. He's on the team. He's here. But he missed all those training practices. He missed all the practices. It's going to take – he's not going to play for a while. He's not going to play for a while. I don't think he will play – at the very least, it'll be at the very end of this year. I don't think he will play much this year just because of how late he got in. He didn't arrive at the same time as members of this class did, like Jeremy Banks. Yeah, he didn't arrive at the same time. He didn't get to see – he's not learned the playbook yet. So I really do not think he will play much this season. But what are your thoughts on that, Catfish?
I think they're going to redshirt him. I think that's the smart thing to do and let him just hang out.
Definitely.
Definitely.
Because if the season is already gone by the time he's ready to go, definitely the smart move would be to redshirt. But now let's say this is not going to happen, in my opinion. Not going to happen. But by some miracle, if Tennessee is in contention for the Eastern Division, then J.J. Peterson's ready to go. This is not going to happen. But if it does, just in case, I would definitely – and there's 2 more games Tennessee has to get through in order for them to win the East. Definitely play J.J. Peterson. But that's not going to happen.
Couch Coach is over there having a heart attack with you saying being in contention for the East.
That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen, Cat Coach or what's his name, Couch Coach?
Yeah, I don't know if he's still.
By no means do I think that's going to happen. I'm just saying if it does, by some miracle, that is I would not redshirt Peterson in that scenario. But I don't think that's going to happen in the East. I think Tennessee, best case scenario, finishes 3rd or 4th this year in the East. My predictions I had them going 6-6. I had them in 4th place in the Eastern Division.
Well, let's talk about the future. Is Couch Coach still on? Are you still on here, Daniel?
I'm listening. I was kind of dozing off on all that Tennessee talk, but I'm here.
He thinks we might be in contention. Did you hear that?
No, you're taking words out of my mouth, Catfish. By no means do I think we'll be in contention.
Well, I'll say it. We might be in contention. Mathematically, we could go 11-1. Mathematically, it's not out. So let's go on to next before Couch Coach has a coronary infarction. What games are on the slate, Couch Coach, that we need that we would waste our time or take time out of our day, not waste our time, but take time out of our day to watch this next week?
Well, I mean, Paul did bring up a good point. I mean, that TCU Ohio State game is kind of interesting. I mean, obviously, we've already kind of talked about that. There's really no need to talk about, irrelevant football. I mean, SEC is what really matters, so let's just focus on that. There's 4 games that look pretty interesting this week in the Southland. And we have Vanderbilt going up to Notre Dame. We have Alabama playing Ole Miss. We have Auburn and LSU. And then Missouri's playing Purdue.
Well, I've heard some Ole Miss fans. I have just a couple that follow this show, and they're already talking about the time they beat Alabama. Look, that's not happening this year. It's going to be a blowout. I don't even know what the point spread is. You could just make up a point spread and put your money on Alabama. That's what I think. What do you think?
Well, I mean, the spread is -21, and Alabama usually does cover those lines. I mean, that's pretty fair to say, and I think it's also pretty fair to say that this Matt Luke, I mean, it's really hard to gauge him because he's not a Hugh Freeze. I mean, say what you want to about Hugh Freeze, that Hugh Freeze did had head coaching ability when he was there, and he had some of those quarterbacks that he had with Chad Kelly. I mean, they were always kind of a fly in the ointment kind of team, but if Alabama's favored by 18 there, I would favor Ole Miss a little bit maybe on that line. But 21, that's kind of getting up there. I kind of feel the way you feel. I think Alabama should take care of business.
Well, I just don't think that Ole Miss is even in the same league. The Ole Miss is more like a Tennessee kind of lower tier SEC team right now. But we're on the upswing. Nobody really knows what Ole Miss is doing, but that Auburn LSU, is that who's playing?
Yep. Auburn's favored by 9.5 in that game.
Ooh, and where's it at?
Yep, they're playing in Auburn.
Oh, that makes a difference. I don't know. We got a couple of days to think about it. I don't know, and I'll ask you what you think. How much of that LSU Miami game was LSU is better than we thought, or Miami is just dealing with Mark Rickitis? How much of it is which?
I think it was the more of the Mark Rickitis. I mean, Miami's still going to be a good team. They're going to win 10 games this year. But like I said, when Mark doesn't have to have a victory, he just doesn't get that team ready to go. When his back is against the wall and he has to win, or it's kind of a surprise team that comes into Miami, he tends to win those kind of games. So I think that's what happened on that one. I mean, LSU's defense is elite now. I mean, both of those are very elite defenses. But I just think that I like Jared Stidham a little bit more than I like that Burroughs kid. I mean, I think the Burroughs kid can come in there and manage the offense, but they're going to need a lot more than a game manager to go into a place like Auburn. And that's true of Georgia or any of these kind of deals. I mean, you really have to be able to move the ball through the air with the quarterback that can hang in there in the pocket. And I just don't know if LSU has that. So I just like Jared Stidham there a little bit more than I like that Burroughs kid.
Yeah, I think Stidham's going to be the difference maker because they're both great defenses. The linebacker and the defensive backfield for LSU is fantastic. You've got a great defensive line in Auburn, and like you said, I think the quarterback is going to be the difference maker because Auburn doesn't have Kerryon Johnson and his name escapes me, the other running back they had last year. He just doesn't have that to bail him out, to balance it out. That I don't
Yeah.
think. I haven't watched any Auburn game, but I have listened to a few highlights. So that's going to be a great game, and we're going to wrap this thing up. So everybody, go check out my YouTube page, Volunteer Roadshow, and don't forget we've got the fishing trip coming up with Tennessee River Monsters, not this Friday, but next Friday, and you've got a couple more days you could buy the tickets. They're $5 a piece with a 2-ticket minimum. Email me at volunteerroadshow@gmail. How many tickets you want? You can buy as many as you want, and I'll send you a PayPal invoice. And we'll, as soon as I get it paid, we're going to do the drawing. Let's see, this Friday on YouTube, and I think I'm going to try to download that video and upload it on my Facebook page so people can see who won. But anyway, I appreciate Vol General coming on. I appreciate the Ohio State fan that called in. I call him Delusional Paul. He follows me around and he chirps about the Big Ten and Urban Meyer and Tressel and Woody Hayes and Heisman trophies and all this. And he kind of gets under my skin a little bit, but he's a good guy, and I really appreciate Couch Coach Daniel Moore on Facebook. He's helped me out from pretty much from the beginning last year. Great guy. Appreciate it, Daniel. So everybody, y'all know what's coming next. Thanks for tuning in. Go Vols. We're going to a bowl game. I promise you that.